Lastly, let's go over the 3-3 adjective. And I won't rehearse the forms because we've already gone over what the third person endings look like in the masculine feminine forms, and then we also went over what the third person forms look like in the neuter forms. But what I like to do is just simply highlight how the adjective tis, t, and I'm going to put an accent here, works in Greek. Now notice that as part of its lexical form, I don't have three forms. I don't have a 3-1-3 here. I don't have a separate form for the masculine, feminine, neuter. Instead, this is what we call a 3-3 adjective, where the masculine and feminine gender have the same form. So this, remember, the equivalent is a 2-2 adjective with ionios, on, where you have the second declension endings for the masculine and feminine. They share the same endings, and then you have a separate neuter form. Here, you have a 3-3 adjective where the masculine and feminine endings share the same form, and the neuter has a separate form. Now, I have two different charts here, and the forms are exactly the same, except notice that some either have accents on the first syllable or no accent. They have accents on the first syllable or no accents. So if the accent is on the first syllable, like over here, notice this, the translations for tis and t is actually translated as interrogative pronouns. So this is translated as who. The genitive would be of whom or whose. The dative would be to whom, and the accusative would be whom. The plurals, there's no differentiation in English between the plurals and singulars for the interrogatives, so this would just be a repeat. It's plural, but you would still ask, you would say who are. You would make the distinction with the verb, not with actually the pronoun. This would be of whom or whose. You can say whose in the genitive. This would be to whom, and then this would be whom. So these are what we call interrogative, two R's, interrogative pronouns. And here, because it's a neuter, we wouldn't translate this as who, but instead we're going to translate this as what. So these interrogatives are what. So what? It could be whose or of what. It could be this is to what or which, to which, of what or of which, and then this is what or which. And in the plural forms, again, you can write it as what or which, of what or which, or whose, to what for the dative plural, and then what or which for the accusatives. So the forms are the same as this other column here, but if the accent's on the first syllable, then you translate it as an interrogative pronoun, who or what. Let me clear the board. What happens when there is no accent or the accent's on the second syllable, not the first? Then we don't translate it as an interrogative pronoun. Instead, we translate it as indefinite pronoun or adjective. So if tis modifies, for example, anthropos. Anthropos. This is translated as a certain man. It's indefinite. We don't know exactly which man, just a certain man. So this column would be translated as certain. So if it's nominative, it's certain. If it's genitive, of a certain. Dative, to a certain. Accusative, direct object, certain. And so forth with the plural forms. Sometimes in the plural, rather than saying certain, we use the word some, because that's kind of that's the indefinite adjective that we use when we describe plural forms. So it could be a certain man singular or some men plural. But the key note here is that the indefinite pronouns look exactly like the interrogative pronouns, except that but here accents are important, and you need to remember that if it's a single syllable word and has an accent, or if it's a two-syllable word and accents on the first syllable, they are interrogatives. And if they have no accent in the single syllable words, or the accent's on the second syllable, the final syllable, not on the first, then you're going to translate it as indefinite pronouns and adjectives, a certain for the singular forms and some for the plural forms. And with that, we've concluded probably one of the most difficult chapters you'll cover for this semester. And so go ahead and make your grammar cards, make your vocabulary cards, memorize them, and tackle the homework, and hopefully you do well in the quiz.